Hey guys, hope all is well. This is episode 55 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself, Rugby Itch, as well as the Kiwi lads. First of all, man, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, Tim. Big weekend of rugby just around the corner. URC, Super Rugby, both final rounds. And then the sevens as well, just to add a little bit more icing on the cake. She's going to be a big weekend, isn't it, Tim?
It will. It definitely will. But before we get into this, of course, guys, in terms of like the results that happened from last week, as well as the fixtures for this week, make sure to drop a like, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, guys, and check out our respective channels as well. But of course, just going straight into the results that we had from the following week. The big one, of course, being both the Challenger and European Champions Cup, really. First being the Challenger Cup with the Sharks getting one over the Gloucestershire. So it's pretty impressive, that win, I'd say. I mean, like they kind of, I'm not sure about you, but they kind of ran away with it actually in this game for the majority of it. It was only until the very end where Gloucester actually had a few tries that kind of made the scoreline a bit closer than what it seemed. But what was your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it just felt like the Sharks had it under control. It was pretty different to their game up against Clermont, which was very much back and forth, 1 point kind of thing, changing who was in the lead. But Masuku, I think once again has just shown how strong he can be off the kicking tee, because adding those extra 3 points when they're available, plus those extra conversions, were just well and truly given the Sharks the box seat. And yes, Gloucester fought back relatively well near the end of the contest, but by then, it was already pretty much over. But we did see the DuPont law come into that game. I'm not sure whether or not you did see that one.
Yeah.
What do you think about that law in terms of the fact that I want to explain it, but I also can't be bothered because there is such a, it's a long, drawn-out process. Pretty much the first kick that you were behind, or if you're in front of the first kicker and the second kicker then kicks it and you're behind the second kicker, then you aren't onside because you weren't behind the first kicker. It's kind of like a weird caterpillar scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like I understand the rule because to be fair, it's trying to make it so you don't have that kind of territory game going for on and on. Because again, to be fair, we've seen this a lot within the Six Nations where teams are just trying to go for a territory game for like you could say for 5 minutes in the game. And yes, you may not think that's like a lot of time, but guys, it is kind of like a lot of time when you think about it. So that's kind of why this rule's kind of come in. And to be fair, I mean, is this the first time it's come into play that I can? I can't think of another time actually.
In recent time, it is. We've had it before. I think last season we ended up seeing it, but it's the first time in quite some time, and it's one of those rules that, like, when you look at it, at times, like you said, when it comes to the territory game, it makes sense. But in that case, I feel like it was a perfectly logical try, But we've got a weird rule that says you can't be offside but onside at the same time.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. Like even like one of my mates was actually asking me about it, and he still got confused when I was telling him how the rule works. He's like, that doesn't make sense at all. I was like, well, it's the rule that's in place now. But yes, I can understand the confusion along with it because most rugby fans are still a bit confused themselves. But no, again, this game is just one of those, like you said, the Sharks were definitely the team that just they were just the superior team throughout that one, and yeah, fair play to them. It's a pretty good win, and I think overall, when you look at kind of like the run that the Sharks had compared to what Gloucester had, I think the Sharks they had a better run, I'd say, in general, kind of going towards that finals. So I'm pretty pleased for them, of course, to win that one in terms of the Challenger Cup. And, of course, the first South African team to win a European Cup as well. So that's something in the record books right there. But, of course, for the Champions Cup, however, this is where we had Toulouse and Leinster. And, yeah, Leinster just falling again once again. Just it's incredible how they just can't win a Champions Cup. Like I think you have to remind me how long is it? 5 years or 4 years in a row they've been in the. I can't remember how many times they've been in the Champions Cup final.
I know that they've lost the last 3. And 2 of those was up against La Rochelle and, of course, that one up against Toulouse. I'm not sure how they did the season prior to that. They may have been knocked out a little bit earlier by La Rochelle, I think, in the semi or the quarterfinals for the one prior to that. But, yeah, unfortunately, they got past their bogey team in La Rochelle and then were beaten by another French side, Toulouse, Antoine Dupont, having a very good game throughout that one. And, I mean, the fact that neither side were able to score any tries up until after the 80-minute period just shows how strong the defence was in that game as well, when you got 2 world-class attacks and neither of them really budging. So
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, to lose in that extra time after that James Lowe yellow card, they just ramped it up, and
It just changed the game.
they knew that they had to be a bit more aggressive. And I actually mentioned it on the stream as well. I said both sides throughout the 80 minutes were playing like a side that didn't want to concede a try, whereas in extra time, Toulouse were playing like a side that wanted to score 5. And that was the big difference, because rather than attacking from the get-go, throughout their whole 80 minutes, there was always in the back of the mind, if we go too aggressive, we're going to concede a try here. So they had to try and play a very conservative game. And then after extra time, they were like, nah, might as well just go for it. And it worked very well for them.
Do you, not to say that this is, kind of his fault or kind of his thinking in a way, but do you think because of the influence of Jacques Sneijder as the head coach of Leinster, that kind of impacted the way they kind of approach that extra time? Because maybe I'm wrong in saying this as from a box standpoint, but I like to think that if the Boks were in that same scenario where it goes in towards an extra time, they would have kind of the same idea of kind of keeping it a tight game, or kind of hoping for that drop kick, or just kind of making the team work for the points, really, rather than what Toulouse did, of course, like you said, and just kind of go full rampage and just go try to find that try. So do you think that's kind of like the mentality that kind of Jacques was kind of telling the players?
See, I think Leinster's mindset would have still been the same as Toulouse's. It's just the fact that they got trapped inside of their own half, and then they conceded that yellow card. So from the get-go, they were up against it in terms of that extra time because of that mistake. But, at the same time, when you go into golden point time, we've seen it throughout Super Rugby, we've seen it throughout other competitions, you can't afford to allow the opposition to play their game. And that's even coming down to the kickoff. When you say we want to receive the kickoff rather than we will kick off, we saw what it did for the Reds in their game. We saw how it almost cost the FIJI and DRUA in Super Rugby as well. You have to try and get out of your own half as soon as possible. And the benefit of this one was it was not golden point, because if it was, she would have been over pretty quick. But because it was extra time and they had to play that whole extra period as well, like the scoreboard in the end looked pretty favourable to Toulouse, and that is because they had that attacking mindset as well as just trying to be a bit more, I guess, risk-free and taking the gamble. Which, at the end of the day, in a Champions Cup final, that's kind of what you got to do, isn't it? You got to take the gamble. Leinster, they played a pretty decent game of rugby. Unfortunately for them, though, that streak continues. Now they have to win the URC. And currently there are two sides that have to win the URC, one of which is Leinster, one of which is the Bulls. Because, of course, we've got to remember they threw away the Champions Cup in their game up against Northampton because they wanted to concentrate on the URC.
Exactly.
So now we got two sides with a must-win scenario, and there's a chance that they may even play each other in the near future, and like maybe the semis if the draw continues going the way that it is. I'll just have a quick look at the table while we're at it. But while we are also at it, you might as well tell us exactly what happened in Super Rugby.
Well, yeah, of course. In terms of the Super Rugby results that we had over the weekend, I mean, there was obviously Hurricanes beating the Chiefs 20 points to 17. So a pretty impressive win for them, because, again, the Hurricanes in that one, they were just the dominant team in that first half. But the Chiefs kind of came back into it and leveled it 17-all. But, of course, Brett Cameron stepped up with his second attempt of a penalty and converted it over to win that game. So that was a pretty important win for the Hurricanes. Looking back at the results now that also happened in that round, because when you look at the other big results in Super B, you did have the likes of Crusaders Blues, and the Crusaders got one over the Blues, winning 29 points to 27. So that was one where, how do I say this? Like, when you now look at the final round of Super Rugby, those two results could actually impact where the first and second finish. But again, we'll get into that when we're talking about the fixtures and all that. But it was a very important match from both sides there. Definitely one that I was upset about from a Blues perspective. Like, it's one of those games where, like, the Crusaders just know when to turn up, and they do it just all the time against the Blues. It is just frustrating. But at the same time, the Blues were kind of their own kind of own culprit in a way there, because like I think like the one thing that let them down, and by the way, he had actually an incredible game. I thought Harry Plummer, he had a great game, but that one thing he let him down was that the Blues won a penalty, and we didn't win a lot of penalties in this game, by the way, guys. Like, it was one of those games where the Crusaders dominated in terms of winning scrum penalties and all that, but we won a penalty, and of course he doesn't kick it out. Like, he kicks it all the way down towards that 22, but so that was a key moment in the game, because if the Blues had that, we're inside the inside their kind of territory, and we could have won the game from that position. But look, it's one of those things where you look back at it now, you just can't do much about it. Crusaders definitely deserve the win, and yeah, we move forward. But yeah, in terms of the
any
US,
part of you as a Blues fan, right? We've talked about it the whole way through, and it seems like it's still likely. Do you believe that there is a chance that the Crusaders make it into the top 8, finish 8th, and then they will end up facing the Blues in the quarterfinals?
Well, I would say no in both scenarios, by the way, because one just like I've never. As soon as the Crusaders lost to the Highlanders, I said this way before, like they're not making the playoffs because of the fixtures that happen afterwards and what we've seen. So I knew off the back of that they couldn't make it into the playoffs because it's not in their favor. Like they're not the ones making they have to hope that another team falls for them to kind of get into it. So it's just one of those scenarios where
the performance we saw from the DRUA and Dunedin, does that make you think maybe the DRUA are the side that's going to fall from grace?
No, I don't think so.
You still think they've got it over the Rebels?
Oh yeah, because they're playing at home. This is the one thing with Fiji and DRUA. They're just a better team when they play at home. It's scary to say that because they haven't even won a game away. They officially they're in the same scenario as the Crusaders, where they're I think the second team in this competition that hasn't won a game away. I mean, maybe the Wartars are in that as well because I can only remember 2 games of them winning, and those are both at home against the Crusaders. So maybe they're joining that list of 3 teams who haven't won a game away. But it just shows you that like you have to win those games in order to kind of put yourself in a better position. So yeah, I don't see the Crusaders making it, but again, I could be proven wrong. We'll have to wait and see. But I just think it's more likely that the Fiji and DRUA get one over in that game. But again, we'll discuss that more in terms of that one. But yeah, in terms of the other results, of course, there was just Brumbies beating the Rebels by considerable margin, 53 points to 17. Modern Pacifica getting one over the Wartars, 27-12. So that was a big one. And again, cool to see Kepu score a try in that because he's announced recently that he's going to retire. So I think he's going to play his final game in that Crusaders one. So I'll keep an eye on that one just to see how well he does. But yeah, in terms of the other ones, another demolishing. The Reds beating Force, 59 points to 13. And then of course, as you mentioned, Highlanders beating the Fiji and DRUA, 39 points to 3. So yeah, some decent results there in terms of Super Brief from what we had last week. But yeah, just quickly for this URC then, what does the table look like in that?
Well, believe it or not, with the games that we've had recently, we find ourselves in the scenario of if the current top 4 were all to win their games by the same margin here in the final round. Just got to clarify that. Now, I believe that 2 of them may be playing off, or I could be wrong there, but if it stays this way, it would be theoretically they have to win their quarterfinals as well. There's a few ifs and buts that are involved, but it would be Munster versus Glasgow, and it would be Bulls versus Leinster with a home game for the Bulls. At the moment, the Bulls are on 61 points. Leinster are on 60, and there's still a round to go. And the Bulls, they are taking on the Sharks in Durban, and for Leinster, they have got Connacht at home.
They should win that.
So they should win that. They should take out some frustrations. Glasgow have got Zebre, so they've got a very good chance of boosting themselves up. And then Munster have Ulster at home. So a lot can change in the URC as well. We've got to remember that in terms of their top 8, it is certainly a lot more hotly contested than what we've seen in Super Rugby in terms of sides having a lot of wins. And, you've got, I would say, 11 sides at the moment who still have a chance of making their way into their quarterfinals, which is actually the same as Super Rugby, except they have 16 teams rather than Super Rugby. We have got the 12, but Ospreys, Connacht, and Lions just outside of the top 8 currently, but the Lions are on the same amount of points as Benetton and Edinburgh, who are both inside of the top 8, but also the Lions are facing a fellow South African side in the Stormers, so it's going to be interesting. See who makes their way through. The only South African side, of course, who cannot make it is the Challenge Cup champions in the Sharks.
It's crazy. Yeah, they just haven't had a good season in terms of URC, but at least they've been able to kind of make it up with that Challenger Cup win. But yeah, we'll obviously go into more detail, I guess, in terms of URC when that kind of comes down towards the playoffs starting from next week. But yeah, in terms of the fixtures, however, for this one, we'll start with Super B, of course. Super B being that we have some key matchups. I'd say there's two pretty key ones, I'd say. I mean, a lot of them are pretty big, actually, in terms of, because it is the last round. It can determine a lot in terms of where everyone finishes. But the first one being Crusaders versus Moda Pacifica. And yeah, this one's where, like, the Crusaders have actually made some surprising changes, actually, when I look at this squad. I mean, they actually haven't included Severus. He's not in the starting lineup, which is a bit surprising to me. But at the same time, if you're ever going to rest a player like him, you can do it now, I guess, in this scenario. Yeah, I guess in terms of the other switches they made, it's kind of the same general team they had following that Blues win they had over last week. So yeah, not many changes for them, I'd say. And then yeah, for Moda Pacifica, like I mentioned earlier, Kepu playing his final game in Super Peace will be kind of big for him. But yeah, well, what's your thoughts on this one? Because I guess both sides are kind of funny for something.
So just quickly again, who did the Crusaders beat last week?
They beat the Blues.
Oh, did
the
they?
Blues. Yeah, I don't like saying it.
Who predicted that one, Tim?
Yeah, I did not like saying that one.
But yeah, the Crusaders, they're in a better place at the moment. They're still not in the top 8, but they're in a slightly better place than they would have been if they had lost to the Blues.
This is why I can accept it a bit. Like they're not going to bet the playoffs. So this is.
Oh, I hope that you are right, but there's a
chance. They'll make it. Oh,
there's a little chance that they
might. FIJI DRUA
make their way through. But yeah, like they've got a good side on paper, theoretically. Like they've got a couple spots that are a little bit weaker. I thought that you're mentioning of Harry Plummer having a few blunders near the end of the game. Fergus Burke was in that same boat. He was trying to lose it for the Crusaders, whereas Harry Plummer was trying to lose it for the Blues. Like
no, Plummer actually had a good game. He had a good game. It was
in the last kind of 10 minutes or so, though, it seemed to be a battle of who could make the biggest mistake.
Who could be the worst one, yeah.
But like the Crusaders, they got nothing to lose going into this contest. Like they have to play well and they have to play hard, and they're at home for this contest as well. They should have a decent crowd, seeing as it's the final game that this crowd may get to see. And at the end of the day, it will be, no matter what, their final home game, even if they make it through to the playoffs. They're up against a Moana Pacifica side that will have a bit of confidence about them after beating the Tars last week.
Yep.
And on paper, they are actually a pretty solid side as well. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a good game. I do hope that it's a little bit close, but then at the same time, I feel like to spice up the top 8 just that little bit more, a Crusaders bonus point is probably what some people want to see here, just to add a bit more oomph to the tail end of the competition. We're going to quickly do the maths, though, Tim. We're going to go Super Rugby.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it right now, by the way. And just while you're searching it up, the great thing about this fixture is that it's actually first. It's not like they can get the 5 points off the back, and then they can just watch that FIJI and DRUA game and see what will happen in that. So it's good for them that they can kind of get the job done first.
True. And the interesting thing is, right, I'm just looking there, Crusaders are on 19 points.
Yeah.
So as nice as it is if they get the win, right, they would be on 23. If they get the bonus point, they would be on 24. That still does not take the DRUA out of the equation. Pretty much the FIJI and DRUA need to win that game. Even a draw in that case, if the Crusaders got the bonus point, would not be enough for the FIJI and DRUA. But they are not the only side that have top 8 aspirations. We've got to remember, this Moana Pacifica side, we haven't even mentioned it yet, but if they win this game, they move up to 22 points. If the DRUA lose by more than 7, then all of a sudden, Moana Pacifica are in the top 8. And at the moment, they actually have more wins than the Crusaders, and that would put them on to more wins than the Western Force as well. So we cannot just look at the Crusaders as who has got the chance here. I know you don't like it, Tim, but remember, the Crusaders beat you last week. That's just something that I had to throw in.
I'm not looking at Crusaders. I'm looking at the same time,
Moana Pacifica, there's a chance that, their points differential, of course, isn't going to get them there, but they will be on the same amount of wins, theoretically, as the DRUA.
And that's the most important thing. Yeah.
And, their points differential really will hurt them, though, if they are on the same points. But there's still a chance that 11 sides at this stage of the competition can make it to the quarters. I feel bad for the Tars, but then at the same time, I'm slightly happy that not all 12 teams can still qualify, because the rest in that, it's bad enough that it's 11. If it was every single team can still make it, then people would be like, you're kind of taking the mick. So
I agree.
We'll see. I feel like, Moana Pacifica, a sneaky win here wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
It's not off the cards, but because again, the Crusaders you just don't know what's going to happen whenever they play. But Yeah, like the reason why I was kind of shrugging there in terms of when you're saying Modern Pacific, it's just like I just think if they make it into the playoffs, it's just not gonna. It's gonna be like I just can't see how they can win that game. Like in terms of who they face, I'm not sure which team it would be, but it's
More
just
than
one of those
likely
where
the Blues.
well, so I'll get into this later. I'll tell you my reasoning in terms of everything around that. But yeah, just for this game, look, I think we're on the same boat here, where we're both saying Crusaders to win with a bonus point. I think that's kind of what we're both.
Ooh, okay.
You don't think?
I'm saying Crusaders to win, but I don't believe they'll be able to get the bonus point. I think they'll have 2 more tries than Moana Pacifica, but I think Moana Pacifica may just shut them down enough. Because, I mean, who's been the leading try scorer for the Crusaders, and where is he in this game?
Yeah, he's on a beach somewhere. He's going, but
enjoying
okay.
the holiday.
Exactly. But okay, so following on from that game, then it is Waratahs versus the Reds. This is one where again we were kind of discussing them earlier. Waratahs just they can't even make it, of course, to the playoffs. They're the only team that can't do it. But again, they do have the opportunity to kind of hurt the Reds in this one, even though the Reds are in a position where they're also in a weird scenario where they can't even go up and they can't really go down. So they're in a scenario where like they're going to make the playoffs no matter what, but you can still hurt them a bit here in terms of this kind of a derby that they always have going. So it's still an important game for them, and it's obviously going to be the last one, I believe, for Coleman as well. Darren Coleman as the head coach, as they are going to find someone new to replace him going into the next season. So they'll want to go on a high for this. But look, that Red side, they just demolished the Western Force last week. They were just incredible in that game. So if they can do anything similar to that performance, then I don't think they'll have any problem against the Waratahs in this one. But what do you think about this one then? Do you think it'll be one-way traffic, or do you think the Waratahs may spice it up a bit?
I think it's going to be one-way traffic, but I'm a little bit confused with the Reds lineup selection. You mentioned it before. They can't go up, they can't go down.
Yeah.
So surely, like, this is one of those games that you are risking so much by playing some of your strongest players. Because what happens if someone picks up an injury? What if McDermott goes down with a calf, or Hunter Baisami gets concussed again, or Tim Ryan, your try-scorer and winger, ends up pulling up lame with a hamstring or a shoulder or something like that. And then you're in that scenario. Yes, you want to have them playing because at the end of the day, you want to continue that momentum that you created last week. But at the same time, like, of course, they might come out of it completely injury-free. But at the same time, if there's 2 or 3 names added to that injury list, Fraser McWright, imagine he goes down with a broken wrist. I've just said different types of injuries at this point. I'm surprised I can still come up with more of them. But, it's a risk. It's a risk with not a lot of reward other than a win up against a TAR side. I guess there's a bit of a rivalry there. Of course, State of Origin coming up soon with Queensland versus New South Wales. Maybe they want to put in a good showing for that. But, yeah, it'll be interesting. I think they should win, though. Just how many injuries get added to that list.
Yeah, I think the only reason why they haven't kind of rested as much players is that because there's a few players in there who've also you have to remember have had suspensions or have had injuries in the past, and they're only coming back into the games now, so they need minutes under their belt kind of going into the playoffs, and that kind of includes Fraser McWright and Tate McDermott, because of course both of them were under suspension. So it's like you want to kind of have those players a few minutes, but I do agree, if there's one player I would have rested in this game automatically, it would have been Hunter Baisami, because that guy has been unbelievable for this season. I just think you have to give him a rest going into the next week. Like, that's the player I would have given a rest out of anyone, like him. And maybe you could say, Matt Fazer, no, because he only came back for a bit. He missed a game, or he already missed that Fiji DRUA game.
See, I would have had a couple of them come off the bench late in the game. Give them some minutes, but don't start them. Like Tim Ryan, maybe you put him at 23. You could even argue that Kalani Thomas could have started and McDermott off the bench later on, give him 30 minutes or 20 minutes at the end of the game.
Yeah, fair.
But
fair enough. Fair.
We'll see. They might get out of it completely injury-free, no worries whatsoever.
Exactly.
And be fresh as a daisy for the next
hopefully
game.
Don't do what the Waratahs has done and just have a whole injured kind of front row essentially. So but yeah, again, we're gonna both kind of moving. I guess like going for the Reds in this one. So that's kind of fair enough. But of course, going into the next fixture, we do have the likes of Fiji and DRUA and the Rebels, and this is probably the key fixture of the round, I'd probably say, because this is the one that's going to determine the the top 8. And FIJI and DRUA, again, like I said, they're playing at home, so it's definitely in their favor. And again, the Rebels, I just don't know what to think about them because they weren't impressive in that game against the Brumbies. I mean, again, they were without Carter Gordon in that one. And to my calculation, let me see, is he playing in this one?
He is,
He
I
is.
believe.
Okay, so there is a chance. There is a chance because they are a completely different team without him. So it's a big thing to have him at least in that 10 spot. They have the team. They definitely have the team. I just, yeah, when you look at the FIJI and DRUA, though, it's just that side is just it is so talented for every player they have, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be a very tough matchup. Of course, Frank Lamonti coming back in towards the number 9 jersey as well. That's even making their team even stronger. So it's I think, look, I just think the most safe way of predicting this is the FIJI and DRUA will win. But I think it will be a close game, though. I'm not saying this is going to be like one of those where it's going to be extended by like a 10-point gap. I don't see that. I think this is going to be a very close game because I think the Rebels will go for it in a way. So, and I think for the Rebels as well, like, let me look at the table quickly. But do they have an opportunity of going ahead? I mean, they can
have an opportunity of going ahead of the Highlanders, who are playing the Hurricanes. So they actually have quite a bit of motivation here.
And that's a big game. That's a big game, actually.
Because if the Rebels finish 6th, they will more than likely be playing the Brumbies. And that is a little bit different than heading to New Zealand to face either the Blues, Hurricanes, or Chiefs. So I feel like the Rebels would actually back themselves more in a game up against the Brumbies than they would up against one of their Kiwi counterparts, although recently playing them 53 points to 17. Not exactly.
That's what I'm not sure,
the best result. But at least they've had that now, if that makes sense. We've seen a lot of sides, when they lose a game to a team, they normally come back a little bit stronger in the rematch. I'm just looking like the last time they went to New Zealand to play the Rebels, they lost 39-0. I'm just looking to see if we got any other results recent times.
They lost to the Hurricanes, I remember. They lost.
And that was up against a second string Hurricanes side, wasn't it? Then, other than that, tell you what, the Rebels haven't had a lot of away games by the looks of it.
No.
They've actually been pretty fortunate with their draw. I'm up to week 1, and they still haven't got. They hardly been to New Zealand, Tim. How's that?
Exactly. But this is what I'm saying.
This is
why I saw their fixtures. I was like, okay, they should actually they should have a good run, but again, I actually put them last in terms of my
brutal, Tim.
My prediction. But again, that was just coming over like I guess everything that's happening around the outside of the club. So
question. Where'd you put the Crusaders, just out of curiosity? Were they in your top 8 somewhere?
I said 5th. Like no matter what,
reasonable.
But that's a reasonable prediction because I knew that they were going to do I knew 100% they were going to do as well as in previous years because they don't. When you lose Razor and you don't have Will Jordan as your for literally the whole season and you don't have Mwanga, like you're not going to be the same team. So it's one of those like where I thought 5th was a reasonable pick, but again they've had injuries and it's in and out and their form has just been all over the place. So I thought 5th was a reasonable one, but no, they definitely surprised me more than that. Let's just say. But no. Look,
did you have the Blues as number 1?
I can't remember. I think I either had the Chiefs. It was either the Chiefs or Blues. Because again, I said this from the very beginning. But for most people's predictions, I think people had the Chiefs or Blues as the favorites for this year, and then like you had like the Hurricanes and Brumbies kind of. As the third or fourth. So, yeah, that's when you look at obviously this next fixture now, you do have the likes of Hurricanes, Highlanders. Hurricanes are in a very, very unique position here. And I think that this is one where I wanted to say because following last week's results, of course, from the Blues Crusaders game and the Hurricanes Chiefs, I actually think it's more likely the Hurricanes finish now as first than the Blues. And that's because I think there's a better chance that Hurricanes can get 5 points over the Highlanders rather than the Blues getting 5 points over the Chiefs. And because, again, both sides are on 51 points. So the Blues have to get 5 points if they want any chance of coming first place. But I can't even remember the last time the Blues got 5 points over the Chiefs. Like it doesn't happen often. Like I think the last time it happened was like 2019 or 2020. I can remember like one game where they're pretty good against them. But that was like the one season where the Chiefs were just they were low in the competition. But I think it was the year of Warren Gatland, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, like the Blues are just we'll see what happens. They're obviously looking to rebound in that one, but in terms of this game for the Hurricanes Highlanders, I just think it's the Hurricanes have made some big changes. I mean, the big one, big arrival or big addition back to the squad is a Stephon Moore. That's the key one really for them in terms of the number 2 position. Because coincidental, you have what's his name, Tupo, I believe, who is suspended now for 3 games. So it's one of those where they definitely needed a player like him coming back on. So that's good time to say the least. And again, with the rest of the squad, it's kind of the same squad, so there's not much to go into that. But from a Honda standpoint, they were pretty impressive against the Fijian DRUA. You can make a case that was one of their best games, I'd say, throughout this year. And yes, I'm not saying that because of I'm not saying from a memory standpoint, because again, I think most Highlander fans would agree that Crusaders game was definitely the one that was the best win. But from what was really just the best overall game in terms of not letting your opponent kind of come into the game, I thought that was a really impressive display there by the Highlanders in that win last week. So they're going into this game with some good form. And like we said, the Highlanders still have something to play for. So we'll see what happens. But what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, it's an interesting one because, like you said, there is a chance that I would say out of these two sides, the more likely to get themselves a bigger win is the Hurricanes. But then at the same time, I was looking through it a few of the past weeks, and of the last 5 New Zealand derbies that we've had, only one of them has been separated by more than 5 points. The rest of them have been last-minute thrillers, whether that's Crusaders Blues, whether that is prior to that Hurricanes Chiefs. A lot of the games go down to the wire, although one of the sides that often get called the weaker link in the New Zealand setup does seem to be the Highlanders. Now, of course, off this season, you would say that the Crusaders fall into that boat, but in New Zealand derbies, it still seems to be that the Crusaders are backed more. And of those games that were New Zealand derbies, the one that was split by more was 47 points to 13 in favour of the Blues up against the Landers. But I do think that both of these games are going to be very close. And I would be disappointed if the Highlanders played their hearts out like they did up against the Fijian draw last week to just head up to Wellington and end up getting beaten. But at the same time, that is literally the summary of Super Rugby this year. How many sides have we seen get a massive win, lose against a side that they should have beaten easily, beat a side that they shouldn't have beaten, and then lose to another side that they shouldn't have lost to? That is the kind of trend of the comp. I would still say that the Hurricanes will win this game, but I think that the Highlanders are going to be very close in that regard. And just to kind of double up a little bit, Chiefs versus Blues at the same time, I do believe that the Blues will get themselves the victory, but I think that the margin, the Hurricanes, I believe, are going to win by around 7. The Blues, I think, will only win by around 3 or 4.
Oh, so you're saying the Blues will actually still retain first then? By what you're saying then?
That's what I'm saying, yep.
Wow.
And the Crusaders will be 8th, and they'll knock them out in the quarters.
I'm going with a likely scenario. Again, we can kind of cover all these games here because they're all intertwined in a way. Because going with that Blues Chiefs game, they made some changes in that one, and even the Chiefs. I'm thinking that did they make one key? I saw they made one key change to their side. You're gonna have to remind me. I have to look at their lineup quickly because I saw it in the.
Semisoni Tolkiaho is not starting. If
that's the one. Yeah, that's the one.
But then also in the midfield, they've actually gone with Poihipi and Rona, which is something that they haven't done.
That's interesting. No Anton Brown.
Wow. Yeah, no Anton Leonard-Brown in there, no Quinn Tupaia other than off the bench.
Yeah.
So, hopefully Leonard-Brown doesn't have too many injuries of sorts. Back to Xavier Rowe rather than Triple T off the bench as well.
I like Satiti, Jacobson, Finau. I mean, that's like Finau coming back is the other one. Actually, that is the one I was actually going to discuss. Finau coming back into the side. Perfect timing for them because that's probably their best loose forward trio there, I'd say. Finau, Jacobson, Satiti. I've been impressed by Satiti.
Yeah, although you still got Jacobson out of position, don't you, in some regards? Yes, he can still play 7 well. I feel like his positions are 8, then 6, then 7 type thing.
I don't think he's an 8. I don't think Jacobson's an 8. I actually think he plays better as there's maybe again.
Is that because Wallace Satiti's been playing very well at 8 though? That maybe you've gone Jacobson isn't quite doing as well there, so he can go.
Yes, because I'm also thinking about the other players in both positions. No one's going to take Finau. Finau is definitely the 6 for the Chiefs, and you can make the case where for the All Blacks, Jacobson was the play in a weird way, his best chance of getting into the All Blacks would be through 6. But of course, you're not going to beat Finau in that position. And then when looking at number 8, I think that TT is just a better option in terms of that 8 position than Jacobson. So that leaves him in that 7 spot. And I think he is a better player than what they have with like Kalen Boshier or anyone else in the ranks there. So I just think that it's a balance. I like the balance. It's a really good balance they have in terms of that loose forward trio. But yeah, no, the big one, of course, when you look at the blue side, however, they've made some changes there. I mean, they've shifted back a few players with Caleb Clark coming back into the side, which is a big addition for them because he was rested in that game against the Crusaders. Same with Dr. Lee as well. So, and there's players who are essentially starters who didn't play that game in the Crusaders game. So hopefully they're coming fresh into this one and kind of bring some energy into it. But besides that, is there any players missing now in terms of this one?
The return of Talia as well was another player who
Talia.
Well,
no. Well, Mark Talia played in that game, didn't he?
Not last week, I don't believe. No,
he did. He was he was the 14. He was the 14 in that. But he went on and off though. He went on and off, which was a bit of a weird one because I think it came under the HA, the whole concussion scenario was really strange. Like because normally you just have it so like you when it's how do I say this? Like when he's safe to go back into the pitch, you can go kind of go back on. But they actually waited another 10 minutes to put him back on. So it was a bit of a weird scenario they did there, the Blues, but there must have been a reasoning for it, of course. But no, anyway, like this side is a very good side for the Blues. I mean, Akira 6, probably is it 2? Like it's just a great side. Like there's nothing bad about it. And of course, your favorite player is now back in the side. Did you see that?
Riley Higgins?
No. Well, not the Hurricanes, but your other favorite player in the Blues, the ginger brother there, Finley Christie.
The ginger brother. Is that because I have like 3 ginger hairs in my beard?
Exactly. Yeah. Somehow there's a relation there, maybe. But no, Finley Christie. He's it's good to have him back. And again, it's in perfect timing actually for the Blues because it's great to have someone like him kind of off the bench, I'd say. And that's kind of funny to say now. He's going to be our bench, kind of our impact player in terms of these playoffs.
Well, that's the thing. Funaki's played so well, hasn't he? So it's really hard to take that back.
He's incredible. Like, this is the thing. We're not going to get into this now because we're going to definitely do a video on this. I think we'll probably do it on this on this channel because I think there's no other way we can do it. But like we're going to go over like the All Blacks in terms of what we believe. We'll do a whole thing because like again, I normally do like a whole tier list around on my channel, which I'll probably do myself anyway. But we're going to definitely do one together on this one. We're going to definitely do that, and we'll talk a lot more about the potential bolters, to say the least, and he's one of them. But no, in this game, I am going to agree with you that the Blues will win it. But like I said, I don't think they'll get a bonus point from this. I just think it's going to be. I'll be very surprised if they do. It's like kind of like that Brumbies result, like where I was very surprised they got a bonus point in that game. So I'll be even more surprised if they get a bonus point over the Chiefs in this one. So I will say they'll win the game. And again, for that Hurricanes Highlanders, I will say that the Hurricanes will win that as well. I like the thing the Highlanders can do something, but just I just have a funny feeling the Hurricanes maybe just run away with that one. But and again, for the final fixture, of course, we do the likes of the Western Force and the Brumbies. And again, this kind of ties in with that kind of top 3 as well, because the Brumbies are still in a scenario where they can actually top the leaderboard. It can depends on other results going their way, with the Highlanders beating the Hurricanes and the Blues losing to the Chiefs. But hey, it's still possible with both those games obviously being New Zealand derbies. So anything can happen. And with the Western Force having no Ben Donaldson, which is a surprising one for the final game, not having them available, they could definitely get a 5-pointer there, I think, in Perth. So, what's your take on that one? Do you think they can do that, or am I reaching too far?
Brumbies by 30.
By 30. Whoa. Okay, you think it'll be that much?
Possibly. I mean, the Force just looked like they didn't want to be there last week. Unfortunately, like they just kept on having try after try after try scored against them, and
it was hard. It was a tough watch.
It was just one of those games that's got to do something to you mentally. And I feel like the Brumbies have shown that they are capable of scoring tries repeatedly. We saw that in their game up against the Rebels. That once they started rolling, it's going to be hard to stop. So to save you a lot of time, Brumbies by 30. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that the Force can also make it a little bit more interesting when it comes to that top 8, because theoretically, if the DRUA were to lose, then that still opens up the door for the Force to be able to take that 8th spot from either Crusaders or Moana Pacifica, depending on who is. sitting in there. So
I don't mind if it's the Western Force, by the way. I've always said this, that I've had a soft spot for the Western Force in terms of because again, they're a team I did predict to finish 8th in this season in my predictions. So they can make it happen, but I just, like I said before, and Fiji and DRUA I just think will be too strong in that game against the Rebels. But anyway, going away then from Super Rugby, moving on then.
Who are you backing? You backing the Force, or you backing the?
Oh, I'm definitely backing the Force in that one. I mean, I got to go for them in this one. I feel like if I go for the Brumbies, it's the safe pick, so I'll back the Force. I got to the Force in that one, but well, I could be horribly wrong, but anyway. Going on to the Madrid Sevens, the final one of the series. Again, just to let you guys know, Argentina are crowned the kind of overall series champions, as they have won most points really from the rest of the tournaments that were played. But of course, in this scenario, and this is just to give you guys a bit of a idea of how this works. This is the first time it's ever happened because it's a part of like the new format that they've introduced this year. Is that the final tournament, which is played in Madrid, is kind of like a separate kind of tournament itself in terms of where the top 8 whoever finishes in the top 8 following the rest of the tournaments then is put into like kind of this like championship. Like, think of it as like the Champions Cup, really. You're in the Champions Cup, and this is the top 8 teams, and then you're gonna have the Challenger Series, which is obviously the other 4 who didn't make it, and the 4 who are coming from the Challenger Series to kind of compete and steal one of those places or spots, or even maybe all of them. You never know, but still those spots, and kind of come back into the 7 Series moving forward from 2025. So it's going to be an intriguing one. Again, we'll go straight into the groups. We'll just pit them out right off the back here, and it's going to be tough because when you're looking at the championship pool, so just let me be clear, guys, this is the championship pool. You have Argentina, Australia, France, and Great Britain. And then for the other one, you have Ireland, New Zealand, Fiji, and South Africa. So, I mean, it's a tough, like, both of them are just, I don't even know how this is going to play out. Well, first of all, these 2 pools first. So in terms of Pool A, just straight off the back, if there's a player you believe will stand out in this pool, who do you think will be?
Well, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because all of these sides could beat all of the teams in this group on their respective days.
Exactly.
But, the question mark, of course, for Argentina always was, what are they going to be like without Marcos Mineta? And I saw a stat a while ago that said that their winning rate with Mineta compared to without was like night and day, the difference that man brings. For Australia, I believe they are going to have Michael Hooper in there. And don't get me wrong, I think he's done all right in his 7s, but I don't think he's going to be the big impact player that we have throughout. I don't believe Antoine Dupont. Is he going to be popping in for France?
He is.
That I was about to say, I don't know whether or not he's going to have his same impact because of the fact that he's trying to transition from Union to 7s again. We've got to remember it took him a little bit of time, only about a leg or 2 before he started finding his feet in the 7s world.
I think he'll be fine.
You think he's going to go all right?
It's Dupont. I mean, I just think
if anyone's going to do it, it would be him, isn't it?
I think he'll be fine. But I mean, just to go off the back here, I'm definitely saying Dupont is the ones to watch.
So I should have said Dupont, shouldn't I? Because then you
should have said it off the back. I gave you an opportunity, man, but I just stole that one. But if there's another player that you want to say
the Blues, another player for myself, Argentina. Looking through at their side, I mean, they've got some great blokes in their team, don't they? To quote the Aussies. See, I want to say Luciano Gonzalez, but I also feel like they need one of those big boys, like maybe Jermaine Schultz or someone to really step up. Palandini, I think, has been pretty strong lately. Johan Palandini. One of those guys. I'll go with an Argentine. Los Pumas, Vamos. We'll see how they go.
Vamos indeed. But in terms of that Pool A then, like, what do you think the order will be? Because again, this is where you guys have to just keep in mind. I believe is it the top 3 to go through in this scenario? I believe it's still the same format. I believe I'm not sure because it's free. It's not 3 groups now. I think it's just top 2, right?
No. So I think it's just the top 2 sides would go through to the.
Okay, so it makes it easier to kind of predict this. So who's
but it doesn't,
I think it does. Who's the top 2 then for yourself for that one?
Argentina, France, I would say.
Fair.
But then
Fair.
the Aussies can do it as well, can't they?
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Argentina miss out and it's Australia, France who go through. And I feel
So-
like we're also underestimating Great Britain. The
I was
fact
to
that
say,
they were
Great
able to
Britain is
finish
there.
quite high up
can't underestimate
in
them.
their last competition. I'll go Argentina, France.
Argentina, France, fair. Well, I'm
Yeah.
thinking France, Australia. So that's kind of the
Oh,
order
so
I
you
have.
boot and lost Pumas.
Yeah, I don't think Pumas are going to make it. So, and by the way, you're saying your order is what again? You're saying France, Argentina, or Argentina, France?
I hadn't thought that far ahead. I was just hoping you'd let me away with saying the both of them. But I'll go France, Argentina.
France, fair enough. But okay, maybe then towards the next group, of course, being Pool B.
Wait, what was your order? You were
I said
France
France
and then Australia.
Australia.
Okay,
Yeah, France and Australia.
But
yeah, in terms of this pool championship for Pool B, we have Ireland, New Zealand, Fiji, and SAFCA. And yeah, right off the back, I'm saying my ones to watch is Hugo Keane, because this is the first time he's been introduced into the 7 circuits, and yeah, perfect timing really. We'll get a bit of a kind of experience of what Madrid is like, but also just what he's going to have to do going forward in terms of the Olympics if he is to get selected. I mean, I'm pretty confident he will. And the funny thing as well is that this is where you're going to have to remind me in this in terms of when the start date is of this, because I know that 7s is actually pretty early in terms of the Olympic calendar, if I'm not mistaken. But will Keane then be able to play? Well, is he then going to be playing in that series against the South Africans and then go straight from that to this Olympics?
I think he can, because I think that the Olympics starts at around.
It's like July.
It's either the 28th of July, I think the 7 starts, or the 22nd, or it's somewhere late July, though.
Yeah. It's fair enough, though. Credit to him.
It's an intriguing one. I feel like the other side of things, though, is he could shoot himself in the foot, do a little bit of a Caleb Clark, say, I want to go to the Olympics, and then they go, well, we don't want you in the team anymore.
Yeah, but it's Hugo Keane.
But it's a bit different. It's Hugo Keane.
What would shoot him in the foot even more is that if he got injured in those games against the South Africans, which is it's probable because you're going in South Africans, so you're going to get definitely a bit physical in terms of those battles. But yeah, I think, but like I said, I'm going Hugo Keane in terms of my ones to watch. For yourself, then, who do you think is going to be a ones to watch player in terms of Pool B?
I'm looking at the Fijians. I'm looking at Jerry Tuwai as my one to watch.
Good shout.
Returning back onto the scene.
Yeah.
Interesting call. They've also got quite a few players missing. No Kiminelli Risaku, no Filippo Bukiyaro, no Joshua Vakunarabili, no Josefa Talatholo. All of those men not going to be there for the Fijians, but they have got Jerry Tuwai, so hopefully they go all right. He does. No, he averages it out.
He's a legend, man. He's a legend. So it's definitely good to have him back in this series. But yeah, I guess in terms of my front, in terms of for this pool, gosh, it's tough. I mean, I think New Zealand will finish first in this pool. Second, though, I think the Irish. If I had to say, I'd say the Irish will finish second. The Fijians can do it though. I'm not even counting the South Africans, by the way, guys, because the South Africans are just not even in my good books for.
Did you not before the podcast start tell me that this one was a good one to get involved in because the South Africans had a chance
I'm gonna
of
watch
winning
it.
something?
I'm gonna watch it as a box fan. I'm gonna watch it. I'm just saying I'm not expecting as much going into this one because it's just the box. Like, I mean, you're going against Fiji. Those are always great games against Fiji. Love those games. But New Zealand recently just had our number, and then again, Ireland have also had a number recently. So I'm not confident going into this group. But again, when I look at the fixtures, let me look at the fixtures. Maybe I can change my mind. Actually, while I do this, by the way, you give me your two just while I look at the fixtures quickly.
Well, for myself, I mean, like you said, New Zealand have been in some pretty decent form as of late. They've been doing well, so I would probably go with them as number one as well. I'm just quickly looking at the way that it sits for the Madrid Sevens in terms of I just wanted to make sure that it was the top four, which I believe it is.
Yeah.
Then we got the pro versus relegation games as well. Did you know?
I was going to say, we're going to cover that right after this, by the way. But I know for this, I've just looked at the South African fixtures. We're actually playing Ireland first, then New Zealand, then Fiji. That's probably the worst order if possible, because I think Ireland, New Zealand are the two games we could lose, and Fiji is the one I think there's a chance. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think I'm going to stick with my prediction and say New Zealand, Ireland as the kind of like the two to go through in that order. So for yourself, then what order are you thinking in?
I'm going New Zealand, Fiji.
New Zealand, Fiji.
Optimism. They haven't
Fair
won
enough.
one this year, Fiji. Might
Yeah.
as well start in the championship round.
Yeah. If they can do it, it's awesome. But I guess in that scenario, then you'd be having what? Fiji versus what? Argentina?
That would be Fiji.
Oh, no. You actually, no. It'd be
Fiji, France.
Fiji, France. Ooh,
Argentina, New Zealand.
New Zealand. Eesh. Okay. Then I assume what you're going to say. What? New Zealand, Argentina? You're going to say New Zealand won that one?
Oh, I'd say a New Zealand, Fiji. Oh, but France are good. No, I'm going to go New Zealand, Fiji final.
New Zealand, Fiji,
win it all. Might as well.
Of course. You
I've
love saying Fiji to win it all.
I've called it for it the whole time, yeah.
Exactly. Just
eventually
it's like
happen,
it's not the Crusaders really. You're just hoping for something to happen. But hey, to be fair, it worked out pretty good for you last week.
Yeah.
But I know that for I guess my prediction then, if I'm saying France to be first as well as New Zealand, then it would be France versus the likes of Ireland, and New Zealand to go against the likes of Australia. Ooh, I mean, those are just two right off the back. So I'm going to say New Zealand-France final, and I will then say France to win. So there you go. But yeah, I guess in terms of that, moving on then from the championship side, we're moving on towards the challenger side of it, which is probably the more interesting aspect, I'd say, about this tournament, actually, because this is where teams, obviously, from the challenger series actually have an opportunity. And just to give you guys a bit of context here, the challenger side of it is that you have it's like the qualifier pool, really. It's for like the next year's qualifiers. And for Pool A, you have like Japan, Spain. Well, actually, no, that's the women's. You have Canada, Germany, Uruguay, and USA in Pool A, and then you have Chile, Kenya, Samoa, and Spain in Pool B. But yeah, in terms of Pool A, then with Canada, Germany, Uruguay, US, I'm not going to go obviously into like player of the matches, kind of your ones to watch for each group, but just off the back, who would you say is the two that you expect to kind of go through in terms of this pool?
Well, I think USA for me should be pretty confirmed. Although I'm looking through it like the schedule, and it does seem like every side from the group stage gets to play in playoff games. I'm just looking at it the way that it sits at the moment, and I think that it's the case of like, yeah, if you're first or second, you take on a side that's third and fourth, and then whoever wins that, I believe, qualifies and gets to stay on the circuit. Is that correct? Because the way that this is worded, it does seem like that is the case.
It makes sense because it's 4 teams that go through. So,
so it's not just the top 2 from each group, which we initially thought it would be. It seems like you actually then have to still win one more game. Yeah. Imagine that, winning all your games in the group stage, and then you get beaten by a side that had a bit of a rough start, and then they knock you out.
That'd be mad. It sounds like the US, really, but gosh. But look, I think no matter what, I mean, we're both kind of thinking the US will top that group at least for what it is. But who are you thinking second, though?
See, Uruguay is kind of standing out to me a little bit, but I'm going to go the Canadians. I think that Canada should be able to find something, although missing some of their big guys, Joe Schroeder not there at the moment due to injury. He's American though, isn't he? But I was thinking of the other bloke with the mullet, old Thomas Isherwood. I think he's back though now, so.
Yeah. This may be a surprise, but I'm actually going to say Uruguay. I think they've been really impressive actually in terms of the whole challenger circuit. So I'm going to say then they finish second, then Canada, and then the likes of, I believe, is it Kenya, I believe, in that one? Or is it Germany? Germany, yeah. So, I think I'll go with that kind of order for that one. But, yeah, in terms of Pool B, however, this is where it gets a bit fascinating because, all these sides, there's a good possibility here where, Chile and Kenya, I think, are very underrated in what they've done so far. But then you do have the likes of Samoa, Spain, who are just, you would expect them to kind of be the top 1 and 2 in that group. And honestly, I think that's kind of the direction I'm going in for this one. I think, God, who do I go first and second? I'm going to say Spain. I'm going to say Spain the top it, and then Samoa. Then I'll say Kenya, and then I'll say Chile. That's kind of what I'm thinking of. But for yourself, then?
I'm in agreement there. I think that.
Perfect. Cool.
But then saying that for Samoa, they've been struggling lately, and I do have a bit of a concern with that first game up against the Kenyans.
Kenya will be a tough one.
Kenya will be firing. They'll be ready to go for this one because they are, of course, one of the sides that I feel the cutting it down to 12 teams rather than 16. Kenya were the side that everyone was like, why have they got rid of them?
They missed me. Yeah, everyone misses Kenya. Yeah. But to be fair, actually, because I've been watching a lot of the Challenger series because of Hong Kong, Kenya actually haven't been the same side as what we've seen from the actual circuit
They
compared to
probably lost all their
Yeah.
funding because they got knocked out of the
Exactly. Yeah.
circuit,
So
which is the
it's a
sad
bit of
reality.
yeah. No, it is just I wish Hong Kong was here. Just annoyed me they didn't make it. But anyway, I guess in terms of course, I'm trying to think how that worked for our predictions here because we're then saying what? We're saying USA to finish first. So they'll go against the likes of Chile. So oh my gosh, imagine another time, the second
maths
time.
is hard, isn't it? In
Well,
terms
so
of the
Chile have been in the US in terms of the 15s and got through into the Rugby World Cup. That's how they beat them. Do you think it could happen in sevens, or do you think the USA will just be too strong?
It could, but then also there's brackets on this draw that has first or second qualifier pool. So I don't know what that means as opposed to.
You know what? We're not going to go into that if it's that
first.
complicated. But no matter what, if we just have to say 4 sides and they go through, essentially what we said is the USA. We've then said Spain and Samoa, and then the only disagreement we have is that I'm saying Uruguay have a chance, and then you're saying Canada. So
yeah, I would like to say though, I would like to see at least one new side on the circuit, just because or else then it kind of makes the Challenger Series feel a little bit no offense, but second tier, which it is. But at the same time, you want to see one of them go up and be like, hey, look how we can do this year.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's it really, guys, for this episode. Hope you guys enjoyed kind of that one in terms of talking about the results and fixtures of all the competitions. Like I said beforehand, guys, make sure to click the like button, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, comment below as well, check out our respective channels, and see you guys next time.